He married his side chick in the most lavish wedding Lekki had seen all year. 2 years later, that same man stood in front of his first wife, not as the owner of the house, but as her tenant paying rent. How did this happen? How did the woman he called too local end up owning everything? Why was his empire suddenly hers? And what did he do when he realized the truth? Sit back and find out as we dive into this shocking story. This is the story of a man named Yemi, a successful Lagos businessman who had everything. A thriving company, luxury cars, properties in Lekki and Ikoyi. But what he didn't have was respect for the woman who helped him build it all. It was a bright Saturday afternoon in Lekki. The sun was shining over the Atlantic Ocean. Inside a massive event hall decorated with gold and white flowers, hundreds of guests were seated. The music was loud. The champagne was flowing. Photographers moved around with expensive cameras catching every moment. At the center of it all stood Yemi Balagan. He wore a navy blue designer agbada with gold embroidery that cost over 2 million naira. His wristwatch was a Rolex. His smile was wide and confident. Today was his wedding day. But not his first wedding. This was his second marriage and he wanted the whole world to know about it. Standing beside him was Ronk, a young woman in her late 20s. She wore a white lace gown imported from Dubai. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair was in long Brazilian curls. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine cover. And she knew it. Every few minutes she would pause, smile at the camera, and pose for another photo that would end up on Instagram. The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Yemi Balagan." The crowd erupted in cheers. Some people stood up and danced. Others threw money in the air. It was a celebration of wealth, beauty, and what Yemi believed was his upgrade. In a small room at the back of the house, far away from the noise and celebration, sat another woman. Her name was Bimbo. She wore a simple Ankara wrapper and a plain head tie. Her face had no makeup. Her natural short afro was neat and simple. She sat on the edge of the bed holding her phone in her hand. On the screen were photos from the wedding. Yemi and Ronk cutting the cake. Yemi and Ronk dancing. Yemi and Ronk kissing while guests cheered. The caption under one photo read, "When you find your peace, you protect it. Ring #new beginnings #love wins #Lekki wedding." The comments were flooding in. "Guy, this babe fine sha. You don upgrade. This is how marriage should look, not all those village wives. Lekki boys doing big things." Bimbo scrolled through the comments slowly. Her face showed no emotion. No tears. No anger. Just calm. Her phone rang. It was her younger sister, Kemi. "Bimbo, where are you?" Kemi's voice was filled with frustration. "Why are you still in that house? That man has married another woman publicly. He has disgraced you in front of the whole of Lagos. How can you just sit there and do nothing?" Bimbo's voice was soft but steady. "Kemi, calm down." "Calm down? Bimbo, he is celebrating with that woman right now while you're hiding in a back room like a maid. Leave that house. Leave that man. Find your dignity." Bimbo took a deep breath. Then she said something in Yoruba that her grandmother had taught her many years ago. "Suru ni baba iwa." Kemi paused. "Patience is the father of character?" "Bimbo, this is not about patience anymore. This is about—" "I know what I'm doing, Kemi," Bimbo interrupted gently. "Just trust me. Everything will be fine." "Fine? How can you say everything will be fine when—" Bimbo ended the call. She stood up slowly and walked to the corner of the room where there was a small wooden drawer. She opened it carefully and pulled out a brown envelope. The envelope was old but well kept. On it, written in black marker, were the words, "Property Documents 2018. She opened the envelope and looked at the papers inside. Her lips curved into a small smile. A knowing smile. The kind of smile that comes from someone who has been planning quietly for years. She whispered to herself, "Mo ohun tmoe. I know what I did." Then she placed the envelope back in the drawer, locked it, and sat down again. From outside, she could hear the sound of music and laughter. Yemi and Ronk were celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought Bimbo was defeated, broken, powerless. But what they didn't know, what nobody at that wedding knew, was that years ago, when Yemi was building his empire, Bimbo had already signed something important. Documents that transferred everything into her name. The house they were celebrating in. The cars parked outside. The company that funded this expensive wedding. All of it belonged to her. And soon, very soon, Yemi would find out. But by then it would be too late. Let us go back to 2018. 6 years before the Lekki wedding. 6 years before Ronk. 6 years before everything fell apart. Back then things were different. Yemi's business was growing fast. Balagan Engineering had just won 3 major contracts in Lagos and Abuja. Money was coming in. The future looked bright. And Yemi and Bimbo were still happy. Or at least they seemed to be. It was a Friday evening. Yemi came home excited. He threw his briefcase on the sofa and called out, "Bimbo! Bimbo, where are you?" She came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a small towel. "I'm here." "What happened?" "We've been invited to the oil and gas corporate gala at Eco Hotel tomorrow night. All the big players will be there. This is our chance to network and get even bigger contracts." Bimbo smiled. "That's wonderful, Yemi. God is faithful." The next evening they got ready. Yemi wore a black tuxedo with a bow tie. He looked sharp and confident. Bimbo wore a simple but beautiful Ankara gown. It was modest, elegant, traditional. She tied her headscarf neatly and put on small gold earrings. When they arrived at Eco Hotel, the ballroom was filled with people. The women wore expensive designer gowns, imported lace, heavy jewelry. Some had makeup artists follow them around just to touch up their faces. Bimbo looked around and suddenly felt small. She adjusted her headscarf and held Yemi's arm a little tighter. Yemi introduced her to some of his clients. "This is my wife, Bimbo," he would say with a smile. But Bimbo noticed something. His smile wasn't as wide when he said her name. And some of the clients would look at her Ankara dress, then look away quickly as if they were disappointed. Halfway through the event, Yemi's eyes began to wander. Across the room there was a woman in a bright red dress. She was young, maybe in her late 20s. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair was long and wavy. She moved around the room with confidence, stopping to take selfies, laughing loudly, talking to everyone. Yemi leaned over to one of his business partners. "Who is that?" The man chuckled. "Oh, that's Ronk. She's a brand influencer. You know, one of those Instagram people. She promotes luxury brands and lifestyle content. She has like 200,000 followers." Yemi nodded slowly. His eyes stayed on her. Bimbo noticed. She said nothing. Later that night, as they drove home, Yemi was unusually quiet. Bimbo tried to start a conversation. "The event was nice. I think you made some good connections." Yemi replied, his eyes on the road. But his mind was somewhere else. When they got home, Yemi went straight to his phone. A notification appeared on his Instagram. It was a message request from someone named Ronk at Ibiza. The message read, "Great meeting you tonight, love your energy. Let's connect sometime." Yemi smiled and replied immediately, "Likewise. Let's definitely stay in touch." Bimbo was in the bedroom taking off her jewelry. She didn't see the message. She didn't see the beginning of what would destroy their marriage. Weeks passed. Yemi started coming home late. "Business meetings," he would say. Bimbo would keep his food warm in the microwave and wait for him. But when he finally came home, he barely touched the food. He would just go straight to bed, his phone in his hand, typing and smiling. One night, Bimbo was folding his laundry when she noticed something. There was a faint smell of perfume on his shirt. It wasn't her perfume. It was sweet, strong, expensive. She held the shirt closer to her nose and her heart sank. She checked his credit card statement that came in the mail. There were charges she didn't recognize. Radisson Blue Hotel. Bottles and Dreams Lounge. A jewelry store in Victoria Island. She didn't say anything. Not yet. But one evening she decided to ask gently. Yemi was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. She sat beside him and spoke softly. "Yemi, is everything okay? You've been coming home very late these days." He turned to her with sharp eyes. "What kind of question is that?" "I'm just asking. I'm worried about you." His voice rose. "Worried about me or spying on me? Can't I have privacy? Must you monitor every move I make?" Bimbo was shocked. "Yemi, I'm not monitoring you. I just what? You just want to control me, right? I'm a grown man, Bimbo. I can go wherever I want, whenever I want." She stepped back, hurt by his tone. "I didn't mean it like that." He stood up and walked to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. Bimbo sat on the couch alone. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But she didn't know how bad it would get. A few days later, their family lawyer, Mr. Adelik, came to visit. He was an old friend of Yemi's and had helped them with some business registrations in the past. He sat down in the living room with a folder in his hand. "Yemi, Bimbo, I wanted to talk to you both about something important," Mr. Adelik began. "Your business is doing well and you've acquired some valuable properties. I think it's time we put some asset protection measures in place." Yemi barely looked up from his phone. "What do you mean?" I mean transferring some of your properties into Bimbo's name. It's good for tax purposes. Plus, God forbid if anything happens to you, she'll be legally covered. No wa'ala with family members or anyone trying to claim your assets. Yemi waved his hand dismissively. Just prepare the papers. My wife doesn't understand these things anyway. She'll sign whatever I tell her to sign. Mr. Adelik looked at Bimbo. She was sitting quietly, listening. He could see intelligence in her eyes, but he said nothing. All right then, Mr. Adelik said. I'll prepare the documents. We'll do the Lekki house, the 2 Ikoyi rental properties, and transfer 40% of your company shares to her name. Just as a protective measure. Fine. Whatever you think is best, Yemi said, still looking at his phone. Mr. Adelik returned a week later with the documents. They all sat at the dining table. The lawyer explained each document carefully. Bimbo listened to every word. She read every line. She asked questions. What does this clause mean? How does this protect us? What are my rights under this agreement? Mr. Adelik was impressed. This woman was sharp. But Yemi wasn't paying attention. His phone kept buzzing. He was texting someone and smiling. When it was time to sign, he barely glanced at the papers. He signed quickly, one after another, while typing on his phone with his other hand. Bimbo signed slowly and carefully. She understood exactly what she was signing. The Lekki mansion was now in her name. The Ikoyi properties were in her name. 40% of Balagan Engineering was legally hers. Mr. Adelik gathered the documents and left. Yemi went back to his phone. Bimbo went to the kitchen and filed the copies of the documents in a safe place, in a brown envelope marked Property Documents 2018. That night, after Yemi had fallen asleep, Bimbo knelt beside her bed. She clasped her hands together and whispered a prayer in Yoruba. O Lauren, if this marriage will scatter, please protect what we built together. Don't let my work be in vain. Cover me with your wisdom. She didn't know it yet, but God was listening. And her prayer had just set the foundation for everything that would come next. 6 months later, things had gotten worse. Much worse. Yemi was no longer hiding his relationship with Ronk. He would talk about her openly to his friends. She gets me, he would say. She understands my lifestyle. Bimbo heard these conversations. Each word was like a knife to her heart. But she remained silent. She cleaned the house. She cooked his meals. She managed everything while Yemi spent more and more time away from home. Then came the day that changed everything. It was Yemi's younger brother's wedding. A big traditional ceremony in Ikorodu. The whole family was invited. Bimbo wore a beautiful green asoebi with a matching geli. She looked elegant and respectful, like a proper Yoruba wife should. When they arrived at the venue, Yemi walked ahead of her. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't introduce her to people. He just walked in and started greeting his friends. Bimbo found a seat and sat down quietly. She watched as people danced, ate, and celebrated. Then she saw something that made her stomach turn. Yemi walked into the hall with Ronk by his side. Ronk wore the same green asoebi, the same color as Bimbo. But hers was styled differently, cut lower, fitted tighter, more revealing. Her makeup was heavy. Her jewelry was loud. And she walked with her arm linked through Yemi's as if she belonged there. People started whispering. Heads turned. Fingers pointed. Bimbo's sister Kemi rushed over to her, her face filled with anger. Bimbo, are you seeing this? That man has brought his side chick to a family event. To your brother-in-law's wedding. And she's wearing the same asoebi as you. Bimbo's voice was calm. I see it. And you're just sitting here? Say something. Do something. This is disrespect of the highest order. What should I say, Kemi? Should I fight her in front of everybody? Disgrace myself and this family? Kemi was shocked. So you're just going to let him humiliate you like this? Bimbo looked at her sister with tired eyes. Fighting her won't change anything. It will only make me look desperate. Across the hall, Yemi was introducing Ronk to his relatives. This is my friend Ronk, he would say. But the way he looked at her, the way he touched her arm, the way he smiled, everyone knew she was more than a friend. His mother pulled him aside. Yemi, what is this nonsense? Where is your wife? She's sitting over there, Mama. Then why are you parading this girl around like she's your wife? Have you lost your senses? Yemi's face hardened. Mama, please. Not today. Let's just enjoy the wedding. His mother shook her head in disappointment and walked away. The party continued. Ronk took selfies. She posted them on Instagram with the caption, "Family weddings hit different when you're with the right person, #blessed, #family first." Bimbo saw the post. She closed her phone and placed it in her bag. That night when they got home, Bimbo thought Yemi would apologize. She thought maybe he would feel some shame for what he had done. But instead he attacked. "Bimbo, we need to talk," he said, standing in the living room with his arms crossed. She sat down slowly. "I'm listening. The truth is you've become too local for me. Look at you. Look at how you dress. Look at how you talk. You don't fit into my world anymore." Bimbo's heart was breaking, but her face remained still. "Is that how you feel?" "Yes. Look at Ronk. She's sophisticated. She networks. She knows how to carry herself in high society. She understands my world. You're just too simple." The words hung in the air like poison. Bimbo's voice was quiet. "So what are you saying, Yemi?" "I'm not saying I'm leaving you. But I need someone who can match my level. Someone who can stand beside me at these events and make me proud." Bimbo nodded slowly. She stood up without saying another word and walked to the guest room. She closed the door gently behind her. That week she made a phone call. "Mr. Adelik, this is Bimbo. I need to see you." 2 days later she sat in the lawyer's office. He pulled out a thick file and placed it on the desk. "Mrs. Balagan, these are all the documents we filed in 2018. As it stands, you are the registered owner of the Lekki property at 15 Admiralty Way, the 2 Ikoyi rental buildings on Kefi Street, and you hold 40% shares in Balagan Engineering Limited." Bimbo looked at the documents carefully. "And these are legally binding?" "Absolutely. They're registered with the Lagos State Land Registry and the Corporate Affairs Commission. Everything is in your name." She smiled for the first time in months. "Good. Please keep them safe." Mr. Adelik noticed the look in her eyes. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Balagan?" "Everything is fine, Mr. Adelik. I'm just making sure I understand my rights." As she left the office, Bimbo felt something shift inside her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was just prepared. And in the game Yemi was playing, preparation was everything. 1 year later, the unthinkable happened. Yemi announced that he was marrying Ronk. Not quietly. Not secretly. He was planning a full traditional wedding and a white wedding. In Lekki. With all of Lagos watching. Bimbo's phone rang early one morning. It was Yemi's mother, Mama Balagan. Her voice was desperate. "Bimbo, my daughter, please. You have to stop this madness. Talk to that foolish boy. He wants to marry that girl. That Instagram girl." Bimbo's response shocked her mother-in-law. "Mama, if this is what Yemi wants, I won't stand in his way." There was silence on the other end. Then Mama Balagan shouted, "Are you mad? He's bringing another woman into your house. Into the house you helped him build. And you're saying you won't fight." "Mama, I can't force a man to love me. If he's made up his mind, what can I do?" "You can fight. You can shame him. You can report him to the elders." Bimbo's voice remained calm. "It's okay, Mama. God knows everything. Whatever will be, will be." Mama Balagan was crying now. "Bimbo, you're too calm about this. It's not normal. That man is disrespecting you." "I know, Mama. But God will handle it. Just trust me." The wedding preparations went into full swing. Yemi spared no expense. He rented the biggest hall in Lekki Phase 1. He hired a live band, a hype man, professional photographers, and even drones to capture aerial footage. The budget was over 15 million naira. Ronk posted everything on Instagram. The dress fittings. The makeup trials. The venue decoration. Every single detail was documented for her followers. Her captions were full of joy. "God's timing is the best. Hashtag love wins, hashtag lucky wife, hashtag new beginnings." Her followers flooded the comments. "You deserve this, babe. When God says yes, nobody can say no. Lekki brides are different." Nobody asked about the first wife. Nobody cared. The day of the wedding arrived. It was everything Ronk had dreamed of. The hall was decorated with gold and white flowers. The champagne tower was 6 feet tall. The cake cost 500,000 Nigerian nairas. Celebrity guests arrived in exotic cars. The hypeman's voice echoed through the speakers. "We are here to celebrate love. We are here to celebrate destiny." Yemi stood at the front in his designer agbada, smiling like a king. When Ronk walked in, the crowd gasped. Her white lace gown sparkled under the lights. She looked like a Nollywood actress. Cameras flashed everywhere. The MC announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. and Mrs. Yemi Balagan." The crowd went wild. People sprayed money. They danced. They cheered. It was a spectacle of wealth and celebration. Yemi posted on Instagram immediately, "When you find your peace, you protect it, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag love wins, hashtag lucky wedding." The comments poured in, "This is how marriage should look, bro. Your wife is so beautiful. You're blessed." Lekki boys doing big things. Far away from the noise in a small room at the back of the house, Bimbo sat alone. She wasn't at the wedding. She wasn't invited. She was in her own home, but she had been made invisible. She scrolled through the Instagram posts. She saw the smiling faces, the luxury, the celebration. And for a moment, just a moment, her heart hurt. But then she remembered something. She opened her drawer and pulled out the brown envelope. Property documents, 2018. She looked at them and whispered to herself, "Momohun I know what I did." When the wedding was over, Ronk moved into the master bedroom. She didn't ask permission. She just moved in with all her bags, her clothes, her shoes, her makeup. Bimbo quietly relocated to the smaller room in the back of the house. The boys' quarters. She didn't complain. She didn't shout. She just moved. Ronk immediately started redecorating. "This house was so outdated," she said to Yemi. "Now it's going to look modern. Like something out of Architectural Digest." Yemi agreed. Finally, someone with taste. New curtains went up. New furniture arrived. The old family photos were taken down and replaced with pictures of Yemi and Ronk. The house that Bimbo had carefully managed for years was being erased, piece by piece. One afternoon, Bimbo stood by the kitchen window. She watched as Ronk posed in the living room for another Instagram photo shoot. The caption would probably say something like, "Living my best life in our home, #blessed, #looky life, #wife goals." Bimbo shook her head slowly and whispered, "Momohun." Then she went back to cooking dinner. The dinner that Ronk would eat. In the house that Ronk thought belonged to her husband. But Bimbo knew something they didn't. This house belonged to her. Every brick, every tile, every window. It was all legally, officially, undeniably hers. And soon, very soon, everyone would find out. Patience is the father of character. And Bimbo's patience was about to pay off in ways no one could imagine. Ronk took over the house completely. And she took over Yemi's life. She redecorated every room. She threw away Bimbo's old kitchen items and bought new designer plates and cutlery. She changed the bedsheets, the bathroom towels, even the doormat. Everything had to reflect her style. Modern. Expensive. Instagram-worthy. And every single day she posted about it. Her Instagram became a daily show of luxury. #LookyWife waking up in our beautiful home. She would caption a photo of herself in silk pajamas, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows. #blessed beyond measure. Coffee tastes better when you're living your purpose, she would write next to a picture of her morning coffee, with the expensive espresso machine Yemi had just bought her in the background. #married to the man who spoils me right, accompanied photos of designer bags, shoes, and jewelry that arrived almost every week. Her followers ate it up. The likes poured in. The comments celebrated her. "You're living the dream, sis. This is what happens when you level up. Keep shining, queen." But the luxury came at a price. A price Yemi was paying with his company's money. Designer bags piled up in the closet. Hermes, Chanel, Louis Vuitton. Each one cost millions of naira. Dubai trips became a monthly routine. "Just a quick weekend getaway with my husband," Ronk would post from business class seats. Then came the cars. Ronk wanted a G-Wagon. Not just any G-Wagon. The latest model. Customized. White with cream leather interior. "Baby, all my friends have one," she said, pouting. "I can't be the only one without it. What will people say?" Yemi hesitated. "That's almost 75 million Nigerian nairas, Ronk. So, you're a big man, aren't you? Or are you saying you can't afford it?" He bought it the next week. Meanwhile, at the office, Yemi's business partner, Tund, was getting worried. Very worried. He called Yemi into a meeting one afternoon. "Guy, we need to talk about the finances." Yemi leaned back in his chair. "What about them?" "You're spending too much. The company account is running low. We have projects to fund, staff to pay, but the money is disappearing." Yemi waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, Tund. Money will always come. I'm the CEO. I know what I'm doing." Tund leaned forward. "But we have contracts to fulfill. Staff are asking questions. Some of them haven't been paid on time this month." "Then handle it. That's why you're the CEO. I pay you to manage these things." Tund shook his head but said nothing more. He could see that Yemi wasn't listening. His mind was somewhere else. Probably planning the next luxury purchase for Ronk. While all this was happening, Bimbo had become invisible in her own home. She moved through the house like a ghost. She woke up early to prepare breakfast even though Ronk rarely ate it. She cleaned the rooms even though Ronk had hired cleaners. She made sure the bills were paid, the gateman was taken care of, and the house ran smoothly. Nobody noticed. Nobody thanked her. One afternoon, Ronk's friend, Shade, came to visit. They sat in the living room drinking wine and laughing loudly. Bimbo was in the kitchen preparing snacks for them. Shade looked around the house, impressed. "Babe, you've really landed. This house is beautiful." Ronk smiled proudly. "I know, right? When I moved in, it was so outdated. I had to redo everything." "And the first wife? Where is she?" Ronk lowered her voice, but not low enough. "She's still here somewhere doing housework. But she knows her place now. She's like the help." Shade laughed. "Aren't you afraid she'll fight back?" Ronk's laugh was sharp and confident. "Fight with what? That woman is too local. She doesn't even have her own money. She's completely dependent on Yemi. And Yemi is mine now." In the kitchen, Bimbo heard every word. She stood still for a moment, holding the knife she had been using to cut fruit. Her hand didn't shake. Her face didn't change. She just smiled quietly and continued chopping. That evening, after Shade had left and Ronk had gone upstairs to plan her next Instagram post, Bimbo made a phone call. "Mr. Adeli, good evening. Mrs. Balogun, how are you?" "I'm well, thank you. I wanted to ask you something. If I needed to file for full property disclosure, how long would that take?" There was a pause. "About 2 weeks, madam." "Are you planning to?" "No, not yet. I just want to be prepared. Please keep all the documents ready." "Of course. Is everything all right?" Bimbo looked out the window at the G-Wagon parked in the driveway. The G-Wagon that was registered in her name because Yemi had used her tax benefits to purchase it. She smiled. "Everything is going according to plan, Mr. Adelik. Everything is going exactly according to plan." 3 months later, the cracks in Yemi's empire began to show. And they weren't small cracks. They were deep, dangerous fractures that threatened to bring everything down. It started with a phone call. Yemi was in his office when Tun burst through the door, his face tight with worry. "We need to talk. Now." Yemi looked up from his phone. "What's wrong?" "GT Bank just pulled out of the contract." Yemi sat up straight. "What? The stadium project? That's a 200 million Nigerian nairas contract." "I know. They said our work has been sloppy lately. They said we've missed deadlines and our quality has dropped. They're going with another firm." Yemi's mind raced. "How is that possible? We're professionals." Tun's voice was sharp. "How is it possible? Yemi, you've been distracted. The whole team has noticed. You're barely at the office anymore. And when you are here, you're on your phone planning trips and buying gifts. That's not fair, Tund. And there's more. We're behind on 3 other projects because funds have been diverted." "Diverted where?" Tund threw a stack of bank statements on the desk. "You tell me." Yemi picked them up with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the pages. Huge withdrawals jumped out at him. 5 million Nigerian nairas, personal expenses 8 million Nigerian nairas, miscellaneous 12 million Nigerian nairas, family matters 15 million Nigerian nairas, vehicle purchase. His heart sank as the memories flooded back. Ronk's Birkin bag, the Dubai trip, the G-Wagon down payment, the jewelry, the hotel stays, the champagne-filled parties. He had been bleeding his own company dry. Tun's voice cut through his thoughts. "We have staff to pay, Yemi. Contracts to fulfill. But the money isn't there. You've been using company funds like your personal account." Yemi loosened his tie. Sweat formed on his forehead. "We'll fix it. I'll bring in new clients. I'll work harder. It's not just about working harder. We have a reputation problem now. Word is spreading. People are saying Balogun Engineering is unstable." And Tun was right. By the end of the month, 3 senior engineers had resigned. They had families to feed and couldn't wait for uncertain salaries. Other staff members were updating their CVs. The office atmosphere had changed from confident to anxious. At home, Ronk was completely oblivious. She was in the living room planning her next photo shoot when Yemi walked in, exhausted and stressed. "Baby, I need 500,000 Nigerian nairas," she said without looking up from her phone. Yemi stopped in his tracks. "For what?" "A new wardrobe. I have a brand collaboration coming up and I need to look good. My followers expect quality content." Something snapped inside Yemi. "Can you not think about Instagram for one day? Just one day?" Ronk looked up, offended. "Excuse me? Instagram is my brand. It's how I make my money. This is what you signed up for when you married me. I'm dealing with serious business issues right now, Ronk. The company is struggling. I can't just keep throwing money at your lifestyle." She stood up, her voice rising. Struggling? What do you mean struggling? You're a big man. You own properties. You drive expensive cars. How can you be struggling? Because maintaining your lifestyle is draining everything. They stared at each other. The tension was thick. Then Ronk's face softened into manipulation. She walked over and touched his arm. Baby, I'm sorry. I didn't know things were that bad. It's just work stress, right? It'll pass. You're brilliant. You'll figure it out. Yemi sighed and backed down. You're right. I'm sorry. Just give me some time to sort things out. Of course, baby. Take all the time you need. But the next day, she posted a photo of herself shopping at a luxury boutique with the caption, Retail therapy hits different #self-care #Lekki life. From the kitchen, Bimbo watched it all. She heard the arguments. She saw the stress on Yemi's face. She noticed how he came home later and later, how he barely ate, how his confidence was crumbling. And she made a phone call. Mr. Adelik, it's Bimbo. Yes, Mrs. Balagan? Start preparing the documents. It's time. How soon do you need them? Very soon. Within the week. There was a pause. Then the lawyer's voice came through, understanding and professional. I'll have everything ready, madam. Bimbo hung up and looked out at the house she had quietly protected for years. The house that everyone thought belonged to Yemi. The house where Ronk posed for photos every day. The house that would soon reveal its true owner. The storm was coming. And Bimbo was ready. 2 weeks later, desperation had fully set in. Yemi's company was drowning. Suppliers were demanding payment. Staff were threatening to leave. And the bank was calling about the business loan that was about to default. Yemi sat in his office, head in his hands, when his phone rang. It was the bank manager from First Bank. Mr. Balagan, we need to discuss the extension on your business loan. Yemi straightened up. Yes, I wanted to talk about that. I need 3 more months. We can consider it, but we'll need additional collateral. Something substantial. Yemi's mind raced. Then it hit him. The house. My Lekki house. It's worth over 200 million Nigerian nairas. That would work. Send us the property documents and we'll process the extension. Relief flooded through Yemi. Finally, a solution. He rushed to his filing cabinet at home and searched for the property documents. When he found them, he barely glanced at them before scanning and emailing them to the bank. Problem solved, he whispered to himself. The next day he was in a meeting when his phone rang. It was the bank manager again. Mr. Balagan, we have a problem. Yemi's stomach tightened. What problem? We cannot accept the Lekki property as collateral. Why not? It's worth more than enough to cover the loan. The bank manager's voice was professional but firm. Sir, according to the Lagos State Land Registry, you are not the registered owner of that property. Time seemed to stop. Yemi's voice came out weak. What do you mean? That's my house. According to our records and the government database, the registered owner is Mrs. Bimbo Adebisi Balagan. Not you. The property was registered in her name in 2018. Full ownership. Yemi's hand started shaking. Check again. There must be a mistake. I'm looking at the official records right now, sir. There's no mistake. The property at 15 Admiralty Way, Lekki Phase 1, is registered to your wife. The phone slipped from Yemi's hand. He sat frozen for a moment, his mind unable to process what he had just heard. Then, like a man possessed, he jumped up and rushed out of the office. At home, he went straight to the filing cabinet. He pulled out every property document he owned. His hands shook as he read them one by one. Certificate of Occupancy Property, 15 Admiralty Way, Lekki Phase 1 owner, Mrs. Bimbo Adebisi Balagan. His heart pounded. He grabbed the next document. Deed of Transfer Property, 24 and 26 Kefi Street, Ikoyi owner, Mrs. Bimbo Adebisi Balagan. Panic set in. He searched for more. Property Registration Property, Victoria Island Commercial Building owner, Mrs. Bimbo Adebisi Balagan. No, 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 no. He was muttering now, sweat dripping down his face. He opened his company documents. Balagan Engineering Limited Share Distribution. Yemi Adebola Balagan, 60%, Bimbo Adebisi Balagan 40%. Everything. Every major asset he thought he owned. Every property he had used to impress people. Every building he had boasted about. All of it was in Bimbo's name. Then the memory hit him like a thunderbolt. The lawyer's visit. Mr. Adelik sitting in the living room. We should put some properties in Bimbo's name. Tax benefits. Asset protection. Yemi had been on his phone. Texting Ronk. Planning their next secret meeting. He had barely looked at the papers. Just prepare them. My wife doesn't understand these things anyway. He had signed them. Document after document. While laughing. While texting. While completely ignoring what he was doing. And Bimbo? She had read everything. Asked questions. Understood every clause. Signed carefully. She had known exactly what she was doing. Yemi collapsed into a chair, the documents scattered around him. His simple local wife had outsmarted him. The woman he thought was too unsophisticated to understand business had legally owned everything for the past 6 years. He had been living in her house. Driving cars registered in her name. Buying gifts for Ronk with money from a company she partially owned. And he hadn't even known it. The realization crushed him. His arrogance. His dismissiveness. His assumption that silence meant stupidity. It had all led to this moment. He sat there in the growing darkness of the evening, surrounded by the evidence of his own foolishness, and whispered to himself, "What have I done?" Yemi sat among the scattered documents for almost an hour. His mind couldn't process it. How could this have happened? How could he have been so blind? Then anger took over. He stood up, gathered the documents in his shaking hands, and stormed through the house looking for Bimbo. He found her in the kitchen, calmly preparing dinner. The smell of jollof rice filled the air. She was humming softly to herself, completely at peace. Yemi slammed the documents on the kitchen counter. "What is this?" Bimbo turned slowly, her face calm. She glanced at the papers and then back at him. "Property documents. Everything is in your name. The house. The properties. The company shares. Everything." His voice was shaking with rage and panic. "Yes," she replied simply. "How? When? How did this happen?" Bimbo dried her hands on a towel and looked him in the eye. 2018. Your lawyer, Mr. Adelik, recommended it. Asset protection, remember? You signed everything. I managed everything since then. His voice rose to a shout. "You tricked me." Her voice remained level, unshaken. "I didn't trick you, Yemi. You just didn't pay attention. You were too busy texting Ronk to read what you were signing." The truth of her words hit him like a physical blow. He remembered now, clearly. Sitting at that table. His phone buzzing. Ronk's messages making him smile. The lawyer talking. Bimbo asking questions. And him? Signing without reading. Dismissing it all. "But, this is my money. I built this business. I bought these properties." Bimbo's eyes didn't waver. "Our money, Yemi. I was there when you had nothing. Do you remember? I cooked meals for your first clients in our one-bedroom apartment. I managed this home so you could focus on growing your business. I supported you when no one else believed in you. The law recognizes my contribution. And so should you. You can't do this to me. I already did. Years ago. I just waited quietly to see what kind of man you would become." Yemi grabbed at the counter for support. His legs felt weak. "So all this time, you knew?" "I knew. And you said nothing? What was there to say? You had already made your choices. You chose Ronk. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to call me too local and unsophisticated. I just chose to protect myself. Legally." At that moment they heard footsteps. Ronk walked into the kitchen, her phone in her hand as always. "Baby, what's all the noise?" "I'm trying to record a video and..." She stopped when she saw Yemi's face. The panic. The sweat. The scattered papers. Then she saw Bimbo's calm expression. "What's going on?" Ronk asked, her voice suddenly uncertain. Yemi could barely get the words out. Everything is in her name." Ronk's perfectly made-up face twisted in confusion. "What do you mean everything?" "The house. This house we're standing in. It's hers. Legally registered to her." Ronk's eyes widened. "What?" "The Ikoyi properties. Hers. The company shares. 40% hers. Everything I thought I owned. I don't own." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Ronk looked from Yemi to Bimbo and back again. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Bimbo simply returned to stirring her pot of rice. She didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She just continued cooking as if this was the most normal conversation in the world. And in a way it was. Because for 6 years she had known this day would come. She had known that one day Yemi's arrogance would catch up with him. And when it did, she would be standing on solid legal ground. Ronk finally found her voice. "So wait, you're saying you don't own this house?" Yemi shook his head, unable to speak. "The cars? Registered in her name. The company? She owns 40%. Ronk stepped back slowly. Her face had gone pale under her makeup. The reality was sinking in. The big man she had married. The wealthy businessman. The Lekki celebrity. He owned nothing. Or at least far less than anyone thought. The influencer who had built her brand on luxury and wealth had just discovered that the luxury wasn't her husband's to give. It belonged to the quiet woman she had mocked. The local woman she had dismissed. The first wife she had replaced. Bimbo turned off the stove and looked at both of them. "Dinner is ready. You're both welcome to eat." Then she walked out of the kitchen, leaving Yemi and Ronk standing there in shocked silence, the smell of jollof rice filling the air, and the weight of the truth crushing down on them. Ronk stood in the kitchen, frozen. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. For several minutes she said nothing. She just stared at the documents on the counter. Then she looked up at Yemi. Her voice came out slowly, carefully. "Wait, let me understand this correctly. This house is hers." Yemi nodded weakly, unable to meet her eyes. "The cars in the driveway? Registered in her name. The company you've been running? She owns 40%. Ronk's face went through several changes. Confusion. Realization. And then finally, cold calculation. She stepped back from him. "So you're basically broke?" "I'm not broke, Ronk. The business can recover. We just need time to..." "Time for what?" Her voice was rising now, losing its usual sweetness. "You told me you were a big man. You told me you owned all of this." "I thought I did. I didn't know she had." "You didn't know?" Ronk's laugh was bitter and sharp. "How do you not know who owns your own house? How do you sign away everything and not even realize it?" Yemi had no answer. He just stood there, looking smaller than he ever had before. Ronk looked at him with disgust. "I didn't sign up for this." "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said." She turned and walked toward the bedroom. Yemi followed her. "Ronk, baby, wait. We can fix this. The business will recover. I just need to restructure and..." She spun around. "And what? Beg your first wife for permission to use her properties? Live in her house like a tenant?" She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "Do you know how this makes me look? Do you know what people will say when they find out? Nobody has to find out. Everybody will find out. This is Lagos. News like this doesn't stay hidden." She was throwing clothes into a suitcase now. Designer dresses. Bags. "Where are you going?" "Away from this mess. I thought you were a big man, Yemi. I thought you had everything under control." "I do. You just what? You just found out you've been living in someone else's house? Driving someone else's cars?" She grabbed her jewelry box. "I left my comfort zone for you. I left men who were actually wealthy for you. And now I find out it was all a lie. But you said you loved me." Ronk stopped packing and looked at him. Really looked at him. When she spoke, her voice was cold and honest. "I loved your lifestyle, Yemi. Your money. Your status. The way you made me feel like a queen. I loved what you could give me. So it was never about me? It was about what you represented. Success. Wealth. Power." She zipped up the second suitcase. "I'm not staying to watch you become broke. I'm not staying to be mocked by Lagos society when they find out the truth. But we're married. Then we'll get unmarried. My lawyer will contact you." She grabbed both suitcases and walked toward the door. Yemi followed her, desperate now. "Ronk, please. Don't do this. We can work it out." She stopped at the door and turned one last time. "Let me give you some advice, Yemi. Next time you want to marry someone, make sure you actually own something first." Then she walked out. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor. The door slammed shut. Yemi stood there, alone in the hallway of the house he didn't own, staring at the space where his Instagram wife had just been. The woman he had humiliated his first wife for. The woman he had spent millions on. The woman who had posted about their blessed life every single day. She was gone. Just like that. The moment things got difficult, she vanished. He heard a soft sound behind him. He turned. Bimbo was standing in the doorway, watching him calmly. "Please," Yemi's voice broke. "Please, Bimbo. We can fix this. Don't do this to me." She looked at him with eyes that held no anger, no joy at his suffering. Just quiet strength. "I'm not doing anything to you, Yemi. You did this to yourself. You threw me away like trash for a woman who loved your money, not you. You humiliated me in front of your family and friends. You made me invisible in my own home. I know. I was wrong. I was foolish. Please." "So what now?" she asked, her voice calm and measured. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean? What happens next? What do you want from me?" I don't know. Can we talk? Please? Bimbo nodded slowly. Tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. Tonight you should rest. You look tired. She turned and walked to her room. The small room in the back. The room she had accepted without complaint when Ronk had taken over the master bedroom. Yemi stood alone in the hallway of Bimbo's house, listening to the silence, and finally understanding what he had lost. The next morning Yemi woke up in the guest room. He hadn't slept in the master bedroom. That room still smelled like Ronk's perfume and he couldn't bear it. At 9 a.m. the doorbell rang. Yemi opened it to find Mr. Adelik, the lawyer, standing there with a briefcase. "Good morning, Mr. Balagan." Yemi's voice was hoarse. "Good morning." They walked to the living room. The same room where Ronk had posed for countless Instagram photos. The same room where she had celebrated her blessed life. Now it felt empty and cold. Bimbo came down the stairs wearing a simple Ankara dress. Her natural hair was neat. No makeup. No jewelry. Just calm, quiet dignity. Mr. Adelik opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. He placed them on the table and began to speak in a professional tone. "Mr. Balagan, I want to make sure we are all clear on the legal facts. According to the documents filed with the Lagos State Land Registry and the Corporate Affairs Commission, Mrs. Bimbo Adebisi Balagan is the registered owner of the following assets." He read from a list. Property at 15 Admiralty Way, Lekki Phase 1 to 100% ownership. 2 properties at 24 and 26 Kefi Street, Ikoyi 100% ownership. Commercial building on Victoria Island, 100% ownership. 40% shares in Balagan Engineering Limited. Vehicle registrations for the Range Rover, the Mercedes-Benz and the G-Wagon. Each item on the list felt like a hammer blow to Yemi's chest. Mr. Adelik continued, "All of these were legally transferred and registered in 2018. You signed all the documents, Mr. Balagan. Your signature is on file." Yemi's voice was barely a whisper. "So she's throwing me out?" Bimbo spoke for the first time. "I'm not throwing you out, Yemi." He looked up, surprised. "I have 2 options for you," she said calmly. "And you can choose which one you want." "What options?" She looked him directly in the eye. "Option 1, you can stay here as a tenant. You'll pay monthly rent at market rate. That's 2 million Nigerian nairas per month for this property. You can continue to run the business, but I remain a 40% shareholder with full voting rights. All major decisions require my approval." Yemi swallowed hard. "And option 2? We sell everything. The properties, the company shares, everything. We split the assets according to legal ownership. You take your share and start over somewhere else. Completely separate." The lawyer added, "If you choose option 1, there will be conditions written into a formal agreement. No more reckless spending. No more using company funds for personal luxury. Financial decisions must be documented and approved. And certainly no more additional marriages." Yemi sat in silence. He was being given a choice. A chance. Mercy he absolutely did not deserve. Finally he spoke, his voice broken. "Why? Why are you doing this? Why not just destroy me completely? You have every right to. I treated you terribly." Bimbo's answer came slowly, thoughtfully. "Because unlike you, Yemi, I remember where we started. I remember when we were in that 1-bedroom apartment in Surulere. When we had nothing but dreams and hope. When we ate Gary and groundnut because that's all we could afford." Her voice remained steady. "I remember the man who used to come home and thank me for managing our small life so carefully. The man who promised we would build something together. That man existed once. I'm not doing this for the man you became. I'm doing this to protect what we built before you forgot its value." Tears formed in Yemi's eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Bimbo. I was a fool." "Yes, you were. But foolishness doesn't have to be permanent. You can learn. You can change. That's up to you." Mr. Adelik pulled out 2 sets of documents. "These are the contracts for both options. Take your time. Read them carefully this time. Understand what you're signing." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Yemi took the documents with shaking hands. "Can I have some time to think?" "You have 3 days," Bimbo said. "After that, I'll need an answer." Mr. Adelik packed up his briefcase. "I'll be in touch, Mr. Balagan." He nodded to Bimbo. "Mrs. Balagan." After the lawyer left, Yemi and Bimbo sat in silence for a moment. "For what it's worth," Yemi said quietly, "you were always smart. Smarter than I ever gave you credit for. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy looking at what I thought I wanted." Bimbo stood up. "Being underestimated is sometimes an advantage, Yemi. People tell you things. They show you who they really are. They make mistakes around you because they think you won't notice. You noticed everything. I did. And you planned for this. For years. I didn't plan for you to betray me, Yemi. But once I saw it happening, yes, I planned to protect myself. Any wise woman would. She walked toward the kitchen, then paused and turned back. You have 3 days to decide what kind of man you want to be going forward. Choose wisely this time. Then she left him alone with the documents and his thoughts. 3 months later. The house was quiet, peaceful, different. Yemi had chosen option 1. He lived in the guest room now, paying 2 million Nigerian nairas in rent every month. He woke up early, went to work, came home late. He was focused in a way he hadn't been in years. The business was slowly recovering. Bimbo attended every board meeting now. She reviewed every financial statement. She asked sharp, intelligent questions that kept everyone, including Yemi, on their toes. Why did this expense increase by 30%? She would ask, pointing at a line item. What's the ROI on this investment? She would question, looking at proposals. Have we paid our suppliers on time this month? She would verify, checking records. Yemi's business partner Tund pulled him aside one day after a meeting. Guy, your wife is sharp, Shah. We didn't know. Yemi nodded slowly. I didn't know either. Or maybe I didn't want to know. She's saving this company, you know. Her questions caught 3 errors in our last quarter report that could have cost us big. Yemi looked through the glass window of the conference room where Bimbo was still reviewing documents with the finance team. I took her for granted. I thought because she was quiet and traditional, she was simple. I was the simple one. One evening, Bimbo's sister Kemi came to visit. She walked through the house, taking in all the changes. The photos of Ronk were gone. The flashy decorations had been replaced with simple, elegant touches. The house felt like a home again. So he's really staying here? Kemi asked, sitting in the living room. As your tenant? Bimbo nodded. Yes. And you're okay with that? It's not about being okay with it. It's about what's practical. He's running the business. He's paying fair rent. And most importantly, he's learning. Learning what? Learning that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. Learning that quiet doesn't mean weak. Learning that traditional doesn't mean stupid. Kemi smiled. And have you forgiven him? Bimbo was quiet for a moment. Forgiveness and foolishness are 2 different things, Kemi. I've forgiven him for what he did to me. But I'll never forget what I learned from it. What did you learn? That a woman must protect herself even in marriage. Especially in marriage. Love is important, but so is legal security. Partnership is beautiful, but so is having your name on the documents. Kemi leaned back and shook her head in admiration. You're stronger than any of us knew, Bimbo. Bimbo looked out the window at the Lekki sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. The Atlantic Ocean sparkled in the distance. I was always strong, Kemi. I just chose patience first. Suru and I Baba Iwa. Patience is the father of character. She stood up and walked to the window, the property documents in her hand. Documents that proved everything in this house, everything in those Ikoyi buildings, every share in that company, it all belonged to her. Legally, officially, undeniably. Outside, Yemi's Range Rover, registered in her name, sat in the driveway. The simple village wife. The woman who was too local. The first wife who was supposed to disappear quietly. She had become the woman who owned everything. Not through fighting. Not through screaming. Not through drama or social media wars. Through wisdom. Through planning. Through reading the documents while her husband scrolled through his phone. Through asking the right questions while everyone assumed she wouldn't understand the answers. Bimbo smiled softly to herself. Then she turned away from the window and went to prepare dinner. In her own house. That she owned. That no one could ever take from her. The story of the Lekki wedding that changed everything had reached its end. But for Bimbo, it wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. This story teaches us something very important. Never underestimate anyone based on how they look, how they speak, or how quiet they are. The loudest person in the room is not always the smartest. The most traditionally dressed woman is not always the least sophisticated. And the person who stays silent is not always powerless. Bimbo's strength came from patience, preparation, and legal knowledge. She didn't need to fight publicly. She didn't need to post on social media. She just needed to read the documents carefully and protect herself wisely. What part of this story touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, whether you are a man or a woman, always know what you're signing. Always protect yourself legally. And never let anyone make you feel less than you are just because you choose to be quiet. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and share it with your friends. There's another powerful story coming very soon, so subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.